My wife had a hidden folder called Backup Plan with photos of other guys, fake wedding hashtags, and a spreadsheet ranking men by income. When I found it while fixing her Wi-Fi, I changed her password to try Plan B and sent the folder to every guy on her list, including her boss. She called me screaming, "How could you ruin my life like this?" I just said, "I didn't ruin it, I revealed it." That was last month. Today, I had to call the police after she sent me a message that made my blood run cold. The police officer's pen scratched against his notepad as I read the message aloud for the third time. My hand shook as I held my phone, the words on the screen seeming to blur together. "You destroyed everything I worked for. You've humiliated me in front of everyone who matters. But don't worry, Michael. I've learned from the best. I know exactly how to destroy someone's life now. Check your work email in exactly 1 hour. Then you'll understand what real planning looks like." Officer Martinez looked up from his notes. "Mr. Patterson, when did you first start noticing unusual behavior from your wife?" I stared at the timestamp on Sarah's message. Sent at 2:47 a.m., just 3 hours ago. The same time she used to wake up to text other men. "It started 6 months ago," I said. "But I didn't realize what I was seeing until last month." The officer nodded. "Tell me about that day. The day you found the folder." I closed my eyes, remembering. 4 weeks ago, I thought I was just fixing our Wi-Fi. Instead, I uncovered a betrayal so calculated, so methodical, that it changed everything I thought I knew about the woman I'd married. Sarah and I met 3 years ago at a coffee shop downtown. She was the kind of woman who turned heads, not just because she was beautiful, but because she had this magnetic energy that drew people in. Within minutes of talking to her, I felt like I'd known her my entire life. "I'm not looking for just anyone," she told me on our second date, her green eyes sparkling in the candlelight. "I want someone who'll be my partner in everything. Someone I can build a real future with." Those words should have been a warning. But at 28, fresh out of a promotion to senior software engineer, I heard them as romantic. Sarah seemed to love everything about me, my job, my ambitions, even my quirky habit of collecting vintage electronics. We moved in together after 6 months. Sarah quit her part-time marketing job, saying she wanted to focus on us and maybe start her own consulting business. I was happy to support her dreams. My salary was more than enough for both of us. "You're so generous, Michael," she would say, kissing my cheek as I handed her my credit card for groceries. Most men wouldn't trust their girlfriend with their finances like this. The proposal came 18 months later. I'd planned it perfectly, a weekend getaway to the mountains, her favorite restaurant, the ring she'd been admiring for months. She cried when I got down on one knee. "I can't believe you're real," she whispered. "I can't believe someone like you actually exists." Our wedding was everything she'd dreamed of. Sarah had planned every detail with military precision, from the ivory roses to the 3-tier cake. She looked radiant walking down the aisle in her grandmother's dress, and when we said our vows, I truly believed we'd found forever. The first year of marriage was good. Sarah started her consulting business, working with small local companies on their social media presence. She was always on her phone, but I assumed it was work-related. She'd gotten more secretive about her devices, changing her passwords and keeping her laptop closed when I walked by, but she explained it was client confidentiality. "Some of these businesses are super paranoid about their competition," she said when I jokingly asked why she'd started guarding her phone like state secrets. "I have to be extra careful." I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? We were married. We were building a life together. But looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way she started asking detailed questions about my work projects and salary potential. How she suddenly became interested in my friends' careers and relationship statuses. The mysterious phone calls she'd take in another room, always explaining them as difficult clients. Most telling was how she started pushing me to be more social, to attend networking events and company parties. "You're too modest about your accomplishments," she'd say, straightening my tie before another work function. "You need to put yourself out there more. Make connections." I thought she was being supportive. I didn't realize she was gathering intelligence. The changes started subtly about 6 months ago. Sarah became obsessed with our finances, constantly asking about my bonus potential and whether I'd considered asking for another raise. "The Hendersons just bought that house on Maple Street," she'd say over dinner. "Tom told me it was $450,000. Can you believe that? And he's only been at the bank for 3 years." These conversations made me uncomfortable, but I assumed she was just being practical about our future. We'd talked about buying a house, maybe starting a family. It made sense that she'd be thinking about money. Then came the social media obsession. Sarah had always been active online, But suddenly she was posting constantly, photos of our dinners, our weekend trips, even mundane moments like me working on our car. Every post was captioned with elaborate descriptions of our perfect life and tagged with what felt like a million hashtags. "Why do you need so many hashtags?" I asked one evening, watching her type for 10 minutes on a simple photo of us at the grocery store. "It's for engagement," she said without looking up. "The algorithm rewards posts that use trending tags." I didn't question it further. Social media wasn't my thing, and Sarah had always been the expert on that stuff. But the posts started feeling strange. She'd tag our location constantly, share details about my work schedule, even post photos of mail with our address visible. When I mentioned that seemed unsafe, she brushed off my concerns. "You worry too much," she said. "It's not like we're celebrities. No one's paying attention to us." The first major incident happened on a Friday night in March. Sarah had been texting throughout dinner, apologizing and saying it was a work emergency. Around 11 p.m., her phone started buzzing nonstop. "I have to take this," she said, grabbing her phone and rushing to the bedroom. I could hear her voice through the wall, not the words, but the tone. It wasn't her business voice. It was softer, more intimate. The kind of voice she used to use with me. When she came back 20 minutes later, her cheeks were flushed and she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," she said quickly. "Just a client having a meltdown about their campaign launch." But she was different after that call. Distracted. She kept checking her phone and smiling at messages in a way that made my stomach twist. The second incident came 2 weeks later. I woke up at 3 a.m. to find Sarah's side of the bed empty. I found her in the living room, curled up on the couch with her laptop, typing furiously. "Sarah?" I said softly, not wanting to startle her. She slammed the laptop shut so fast she nearly dropped it. "You scared me," she said, hand pressed to her chest. "I couldn't sleep, so I was just working on some client proposals." "At 3 in the morning?" "Different time zones," she said, but her voice was shaky. "You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. But I nodded and went back to bed, trying to ignore the growing knot in my stomach. The third incident was the one that should have opened my eyes completely. We were at my company's annual barbecue, and Sarah was working the crowd like a politician's wife. She knew everyone's names, their job titles, even personal details I'd never shared with her. "Sarah, you have an incredible memory," said my colleague Jake, clearly impressed. "I mentioned my divorce like once, and you remembered I was looking for a new place." "I just care about Michael's friends," she said, linking her arm through mine. "Your lives are so interesting to me." But as the evening went on, I noticed she was having separate conversations with several men, my boss, Tom from accounting, even Jake. Each conversation was private, intimate, full of laughter and lingering touches on arms. When I asked her about it on the drive home, she seemed surprised by my concern. "I was just being friendly," she said. "Isn't that what you want? For me to get along with your coworkers?" It seemed like more than friendly. "Michael, are you seriously accusing me of flirting with your friends? At your work party?" Her voice carried that wounded tone that always made me feel guilty for questioning her. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I can't believe you'd think so little of me," she continued, tears starting to form. "I was trying to be supportive, to help your career, and you think I was being inappropriate?" By the time we got home, I was apologizing to her. That's how good she was at turning things around. But the damage was done. A seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing stronger every day. Last month started like any other. Sarah announced she was going to visit her sister in Portland for a long weekend, something she did quarterly. I was looking forward to the quiet time to catch up on some personal projects. Friday morning, after I'd dropped Sarah at the airport, our internet started acting up. The Wi-Fi kept cutting out, and my work-from-home setup was suffering. Sarah had been complaining about slow speeds too, so I figured it was time to reset the router and check our network settings. That's when I remembered Sarah's laptop was still connected to our home network. She'd forgotten to take it with her, leaving it plugged in on her desk in our spare room. I'd need to disconnect it properly to avoid conflicts when I reset everything. I'd never snooped on Sarah's computer before. In 3 years together, I'd respected her privacy completely. But when I opened the laptop to shut it down properly, it was still logged into her file system. I should have just closed it. Should have powered it down and walked away. Instead, I saw a folder on her desktop labeled Backup Plan. My cursor hovered over it for a full minute. Something about the name made my chest tight. Why would she need a backup plan? A backup plan for what? I clicked it. The folder contained subfolders with names that made my blood run cold: Options, Research, Timeline, and Communications. In Options, I found a spreadsheet titled Prospects Analysis. It contained a list of 37 men with columns for name, age, profession, estimated income, relationship status, contact info, and notes. My name was at the top, listed as current, software engineer, $95,000, married, stable but limited growth potential. Below me were men I recognized. My coworkers. My friends. Men from our neighborhood, from our gym, from social events we'd attended together. Each entry was detailed with information that could only have been gathered through careful, systematic questioning. Jake from work, recently divorced, financial analyst, $110,000, single, vulnerable, looking for connection. High potential. Tom from accounting, married but unhappy, senior accountant, $125,000, married, mentions wife frequently in negative context. Possible affair candidate. My boss, David, divorce finalized last year, VP engineering, $180,000, single, still bitter about ex-wife. Easy target for sympathy angle. The notes went on. Each man had been studied, categorized, ranked by income potential and emotional vulnerability. Sarah had been collecting this information for months, maybe longer. But the spreadsheet was just the beginning. The research folder contained screenshots of social media profiles, photos copied from LinkedIn accounts, and even property records showing home values and mortgage information. She had researched these men like a private investigator building cases. Timeline contained a calendar spanning the next 2 years with detailed plans. Color-coded entries showed Michael transition out. Initial contact, priority targets. Relationship development phase, and selection and commitment. She had been planning to leave me. But not just leave, she'd been planning to systematically evaluate and pursue other men while we were still married, treating our relationship like a temporary arrangement while she shopped for something better. The communications folder was the worst part. It contained drafted messages to men on her list. Flirty texts that had never been sent, but were clearly templates she'd been preparing. Social media posts designed to catch specific men's attention. Even fake dating profiles with photos of herself, using a different name. But most shocking were the drafts of breakup messages to me. Multiple versions, each tailored to different scenarios. If higher income prospect secured, Michael, I've realized we want different things. I need someone more ambitious, someone who shares my vision for the future. If affair discovered, Michael, I can't keep living a lie. I've met someone else, and I owe it to both of us to be honest about my feelings. If gradual transition preferred, Michael, I think we both know we've been growing apart lately. Maybe we should consider a trial separation to figure out what we really want. Each message was crafted to make me feel like the relationship's failure was somehow my fault, that I hadn't been enough for her. I sat in that chair for 2 hours, reading through everything twice, taking screenshots with my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the device. This wasn't just infidelity. This was calculated deception on a level I'd never imagined possible. Sarah had been living a complete lie, treating our marriage like a business arrangement while secretly auditioning my replacement. The woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman I'd promised to spend my life with, had never really existed. She'd been playing a role, gathering intelligence, preparing for the day when she'd found someone who met her criteria better than I did. I thought about confronting her immediately, calling her in Portland and demanding an explanation. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the systematic, calculating nature of what she'd done. Maybe it was the realization that someone capable of this level of deception couldn't be trusted to tell the truth even when caught. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I got calculated too. I took photos of everything. I copied the entire folder to a secure cloud drive. Then I did something that felt both petty and justified. I changed her laptop password to try Plan B. But I wasn't done. If Sarah had been systematically researching and manipulating these men, they deserved to know. They deserved to see exactly how she'd been categorizing and targeting them. I created an anonymous email account and sent the entire backup plan folder to every man on her list. The subject line was simple: you deserve to know how you're being targeted. I included a brief message explaining that I was the husband of the woman who had been researching them, and that I thought they should be aware of her intentions before she made contact. Then I sent a special version to her boss, David, with an additional note: she's been planning to pursue you specifically based on your recent divorce and salary. Check the spreadsheet. The responses started coming within hours. Sarah's flight landed Sunday evening. I was waiting in the living room when she walked through the door, and I could tell immediately that something was wrong. Her phone had been buzzing constantly during the drive home, and her face was pale. "Michael," she said carefully, setting down her bag. "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, though we both knew. "Someone sent some very disturbing emails to people we know. Emails with fake information designed to make me look bad." "Fake information?" She moved toward her laptop bag, then stopped when she saw it wasn't there. "Where's my computer?" "Upstairs. I had to disconnect it to fix the Wi-Fi while you were gone." She rushed upstairs, and I heard her gasp when she tried to log in. A few minutes later, she came back down, her face flushed with anger. "You went through my private files," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "I found your backup plan." For a moment, her mask slipped completely. I saw calculation in her eyes, like she was rapidly running through damage control scenarios. "You don't understand what you saw," she said finally. "That folder was. It was research for a novel I was writing. A thriller about a woman who manipulates men. It wasn't real." "A novel?" "Yes. I've been working on it for months. All of that was just character development and plot research." "Sarah, stop. I know how it looked, but stop lying to me." My voice was louder than I'd intended. "I read the timeline. I saw the fake dating profiles. I know about the messages you've been planning to send." She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched her decide which strategy to try next. "Okay," she said, sitting down across from me. "Maybe some of it was real thoughts I was having. But that doesn't mean I was going to act on them. Everyone has fantasies, Michael. Everyone wonders about other possibilities. You researched our friend's financial information. You made spreadsheets ranking men by income. I was curious. You drafted breakup messages to me." That stopped her cold. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. "Multiple versions," I continued. "Depending on how you wanted to frame leaving me." Tears started forming in her eyes, but they felt manufactured. "Michael, I know this looks terrible. But I love you. I chose you. I married you. You married me because I was the best option available at the time. But you kept shopping." "That's not true." "Then explain the timeline. Explain why you had Michael transition out scheduled for next month." She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Colder. "You violated my privacy. You went through my personal files and sent private information to people without my permission. What you did was illegal. What I did was reveal the truth. You ruined my reputation. You humiliated me in front of people I have to work with. I saved those men from being manipulated by someone who was treating them like entries in a catalog." She stood up abruptly. "I need time to think. I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight." "Sarah, don't follow me. Don't call me. I need space to figure out how to deal with what you've done." She packed a bag and left without another word. The next morning, I started getting calls. Jake called first. "Michael, man, I am so sorry. I had no idea she was collecting information about us like that. The stuff about my divorce, my apartment search, I thought she was just being friendly." David, my boss, called an hour later. "Michael, I want you to know this doesn't affect your position at the company. But I think you should be aware that Sarah had been sending me messages. Nothing inappropriate yet, but clearly working up to it. I'm grateful you exposed this before it went further." Tom from accounting stopped by my office. "That spreadsheet was deeply disturbing," he said. "She had details about my marriage that I've never told anyone except you. How long has she been planning this?" By the end of the week, the story had spread through our entire social circle. Sarah's carefully constructed reputation as the perfect wife was crumbling, and she was apparently not handling it well. Her sister called me Thursday night. "Michael, I'm worried about Sarah. She's been staying with me since Sunday, and she's not herself. She keeps talking about revenge, about making you pay for what you did. She spent all day today on her computer, and when I asked what she was working on, she just smiled and said you'd find out soon." "What kind of revenge?" "I don't know. But she's angry in a way I've never seen before. It's scaring me." "Has she threatened me directly?" "Not exactly. But she keeps saying things like he thinks he's so clever and two can play this game. I think she's planning something, Michael. Something bad." That night, I couldn't sleep. Sarah's systematic, calculating approach to our relationship had shown me what she was capable of when she wanted something. What might she be capable of when she wanted to destroy someone? I was about to find out. The first sign that Sarah was planning something came Monday morning. I arrived at work to find my boss, David, waiting for me with a grim expression. "Michael, we need to talk." Privately. In his office, David showed me his computer screen. "I received this email this morning from someone claiming to be your wife." The message was long and detailed, describing how I'd been physically and emotionally abusive throughout our marriage. It included fabricated incidents with specific dates and times, allegations that I'd threatened her life, and claims that she'd been too afraid to report me until now. "This is completely false," I said, my voice hollow. "I figured as much, given what we know about her behavior. But Michael, she's not just sending this to me. I've gotten calls from other managers in the company. She's systematically contacting everyone in our professional network." My stomach dropped. "What exactly is she saying?" "That you're dangerous. That you've been stalking her since she tried to leave you. That violating her privacy was just the latest escalation in a pattern of controlling behavior." He pulled up another email. "She's also claiming that the folder you found was fabricated by you as part of a scheme to justify your abuse. She says you created fake evidence to turn people against her." "David, you saw the spreadsheet. You were on it." "I know. And I believe you. But she's being very convincing, and not everyone has seen the evidence firsthand." The rest of the day was a nightmare. I got calls from friends, family members, even our landlord. Sarah had contacted everyone we knew with the same story, backed up with what she claimed were photographs of bruises and threatening text messages I'd allegedly sent. "The photos look fake to me," my brother told me over the phone. "But Michael, she's filed a police report. They want to talk to you." That evening, I sat in a police station explaining to Detective Rodriguez how I'd discovered my wife's backup plan and the systematic way she'd been researching other men. "Do you have proof of these allegations against your wife?" he asked. I showed him the screenshots I'd taken, the timeline, the spreadsheet. But as I explained everything, I could see the skepticism in his eyes. "Mr. Patterson, what you're describing sounds vindictive, but it's not illegal. What concerns me are these allegations of physical abuse and threatening behavior. She's lying. Can you prove that?" That was the problem. How do you prove something didn't happen? Sarah had been clever. The incidents she described were all private, moments when it would have been just her word against mine. "The bruises in the photos she showed people, they're fake, right?" I asked. "We'd need to examine them in person to make that determination. But Mr. Patterson, I have to ask, have you been following your wife? Checking up on her location? Contacting her friends and family?" "No. I haven't tried to contact her at all since she left." "What about changing her passwords? She claims you've locked her out of her own computer and social media accounts." I felt my face flush. "I changed her laptop password after I found the folder. But I haven't touched her social media. That could be considered digital harassment." I left the police station feeling like I was living in an alternate reality. Somehow, Sarah had managed to turn the narrative completely around. I was now cast as the villain in a story where I'd been the victim. But she wasn't done. Tuesday morning, I woke up to find my car's tires slashed and abuser spray painted across my garage door. When I called the police, they took a report but said there was no way to prove who had done it. That afternoon, my boss called me into his office again. "Michael, I hate to do this, but I'm going to need you to take some administrative leave while we sort this situation out. David, you know I didn't do what she's claiming." "I believe you. But she's filed complaints with HR about you being in a position of authority over a workplace environment she might need to enter. She's threatening to sue the company if we don't take action. She doesn't even work here. She claims she was planning to apply for our marketing position before you began stalking her." It was brilliant, in a sick way. Sarah was using the legal system, social pressure, and public sympathy to systematically destroy my life. And because her original behavior hadn't been illegal, just manipulative and dishonest, I had no real recourse. Wednesday evening, I was home alone when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" Heavy breathing, then Sarah's voice, but different somehow. Harder. "How does it feel, Michael?" "Sarah, how does it feel to have your life turned upside down? To have everyone you trust start looking at you differently? Where are you calling from? Does it matter? I could be anywhere. That's the beauty of it, you'll never know where I am or what I'm planning next. Sarah, this needs to stop." "Stop? I'm just getting started. You wanted to reveal the truth about me? Well, now I'm revealing the truth about you. None of what you're saying is true. Truth is subjective, Michael. It's about what people believe. And people always believe the victim." The line went dead. Thursday, things escalated again. I received a call from my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen. "Michael, There was a woman here today asking questions about you. She said she was from social services, investigating reports of domestic violence. She wanted to know if I'd ever heard screaming or fighting from your house. What did you tell her? The truth, that you and Sarah always seemed happy, and I've never heard any arguments. But Michael, she had an official-looking badge and clipboard. If I hadn't known you for 3 years, I might have believed she was legitimate. What did she look like? I couldn't see her face clearly, she was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. But about Sarah's height and build. That night, I installed security cameras around my house and changed all my locks. I was starting to feel genuinely unsafe. Friday brought the worst escalation yet. I was at the grocery store when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Someone had created fake social media accounts in my name and was posting increasingly disturbing content, angry rants about women, threats towards Sarah, and comments on local news stories that made me look unstable. The posts were designed to look like the gradual mental breakdown of an abusive husband whose victim had finally escaped. Each one was worse than the last, creating a digital trail that supported Sarah's narrative perfectly. By the time I got home, the fake accounts had been reported and taken down, but screenshots were already circulating on local community forums. My reputation was being systematically destroyed, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. That night, I got a text from an unknown number, Phase 1 complete. Wait until you see what Phase 2 looks like. I called the police, but they said text threats from unknown numbers were hard to prosecute without more evidence. I was trapped in a nightmare of Sarah's creation, and she was just getting started. The message that finally drove me to call the police came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been sleeping fitfully, jumping at every sound since the fake social media accounts had appeared. My phone buzzed, and I saw it was from Sarah's number. You destroyed everything I worked for. You've humiliated me in front of everyone who matters. But don't worry, Michael. I've learned from the best. I know exactly how to destroy someone's life now. Check your work email in exactly 1 hour. Then you'll understand what real planning looks like. My hands were shaking as I called 911. I need to report a threatening message from my estranged wife, I told the dispatcher. Officer Martinez arrived 20 minutes later, the same officer who'd taken my report about the vandalism. He looked tired but alert as I showed him the message. Mr. Patterson, have you checked your work email yet? No, I was afraid to. Let's check it together. I opened my laptop and logged into my work account. There were 17 new messages, all from different email addresses I didn't recognize. The subject lines made my blood run cold. Evidence of Michael Patterson's workplace harassment complaint against Michael Patterson, sexual misconduct Michael Patterson criminal behavior documentation urgent, Michael Patterson threat assessment. Officer Martinez leaned forward as I opened the first message. It was addressed to my entire company's leadership team and contained detailed allegations that I'd been sexually harassing female coworkers for months. The email included fabricated chat logs, doctored screenshots of supposedly inappropriate messages, and claims from anonymous victims who were too afraid to come forward publicly. The second email contained financial documents, bank statements, credit reports, and tax returns that appeared to show I'd been embezzling money from company accounts. The forgeries were sophisticated enough that they'd require expert analysis to disprove. The third email was perhaps the most damaging. It contained what appeared to be surveillance photos of me near Sarah's sister's house, with timestamps suggesting I'd been stalking Sarah despite the restraining order she claimed to have filed. Mr. Patterson, Officer Martinez said carefully, these photos, were you at this location on these dates? No. I've never been to Portland. I don't even know where her sister lives. These look like they were taken with a telephoto lens from a distance. Very convincing. The remaining emails painted a picture of an employee who'd been living a double life, embezzling funds, harassing colleagues, and becoming increasingly unstable as his secret behavior was exposed. Each piece of evidence was designed to support the others, creating a comprehensive narrative that would be difficult to refute quickly. This is incredibly sophisticated, Officer Martinez said. Creating this level of fake documentation would require significant technical skills and planning. Sarah worked in marketing. She knows about digital manipulation, social media, creating compelling narratives. Mr. Patterson, I'm going to be honest with you. Based on what I've seen over the past few weeks, I believe your wife is engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment and defamation. But proving it is going to be difficult. What do you mean? She's been very careful. The threats are implied rather than explicit. The fake evidence is sophisticated enough that disproving it will take time and money. And she's positioned herself as the victim, which makes people reluctant to question her claims. My phone buzzed with another message from Sarah, Phase 2 deployed. By morning, Everyone you work with will know exactly what kind of man you really are. I wonder how long it will take them to fire you?" Officer Martinez read the message and shook his head. "Mr. Patterson, I'm going to recommend you contact a lawyer immediately. What your wife is doing may not be illegal in the traditional sense, but it's definitely harassment, and some of this could constitute fraud or defamation. Will you arrest her? We need to locate her first, and we need more concrete evidence. But I'm going to file a detailed report and recommend that the district attorney review this case." After Officer Martinez left, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and waiting for my world to collapse. At 6 a.m., my phone started ringing. David, my boss, sounded exhausted. "Michael, I need you to come in immediately. We've received some very serious allegations, and we need to discuss them before the office opens." At the company, I found David with Linda from HR and our corporate lawyer, Ms. Thompson. They'd printed out all 17 emails and spread them across the conference room table like evidence in a murder trial. "Michael," Linda said gently, "we need to ask you directly, are any of these allegations true?" "None of them." "Can you prove that?" That was the question I'd been dreading. The financial documents are forged, but it will take an accountant to prove it. The harassment claims are completely fabricated. I've barely spoken to most of the women they mention. The surveillance photos are fake. I've never been to Portland. Ms. Thompson looked up from the documents. "Michael, I believe you. But we have a problem. These emails were sent to our entire leadership team, our biggest clients, and several industry contacts. We're already getting calls asking about these allegations. What does that mean for my job?" David answered. "We're going to conduct a full investigation, and we'll clear your name. But until then, we need to suspend you with pay. I'm sorry, Michael, but we have to protect the company's reputation." "How long will the investigation take?" "Weeks, possibly months. We'll need to bring in forensic accountants, IT specialists, and potentially private investigators." I left the office feeling completely defeated. Sarah had managed to destroy my career, my reputation, and my sense of security in a matter of weeks. And according to the lawyer I consulted that afternoon, pursuing legal action against her would be expensive, time-consuming, and difficult to win. "Defamation cases are notoriously hard to prove," he explained. "And if she's as calculating as you describe, she'll have covered her tracks well." That evening, I was home alone when I heard a car door slam outside. I looked through my new security cameras and saw Sarah walking up my driveway. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, but there was something else. A hardness in her expression that I'd never seen before. I called the police immediately, then watched through the camera as Sarah approached my front door. She knocked politely, like a neighbor stopping by for coffee. "Michael," she called out sweetly. "I know you're in there. We need to talk." "I've called the police," I said through the door. "Good. I want them to hear this too." I waited in silence, watching her through the camera. She stood there for 10 minutes, occasionally knocking and calling my name, until the police arrived. Officer Martinez stepped out of his car and approached Sarah carefully. "Ma'am, you need to leave this property immediately." "Officer, I'm his wife. I live here too." "Ma'am, you moved out weeks ago and have been making threats against the resident. You need to leave now." Sarah turned toward the door, knowing I was watching. She smiled, not the sweet smile I'd fallen in love with, but something cold and calculating. "This isn't over, Michael," she called out. "Phase 3 is going to be my masterpiece." As the police escorted her to her car, she looked directly into my security camera and mouthed words that made my blood freeze. "You'll wish you'd never been born." The next morning brought a knock at my door that changed everything. Detective Sarah Kim from the Financial Crimes Unit stood on my porch with a warrant to search my house and seize my electronic devices. "Mr. Patterson, we've received reports that you may be involved in identity theft and financial fraud. We need to examine your computers and financial records." I let them in, knowing I had nothing to hide but feeling sick about how Sarah had managed to turn me into a criminal suspect. As the forensics team worked, Detective Kim explained what they'd found. "Someone has been using your personal information to open credit accounts and make large purchases. The activity started about 2 weeks ago, right after your wife moved out." "That's impossible. I monitor my credit religiously." "The accounts were opened using slightly different versions of your social security number and employment information. Sophisticated enough to fool automated systems, but sloppy enough that we caught it eventually." Detective Kim showed me printouts of applications for credit cards, personal loans, and even a car lease, all in variations of my name, using my employment information but with addresses I'd never lived at. "The interesting thing is," she continued, "whoever did this made no attempt to hide the fraud. It's like they wanted it to be discovered and traced back to you. My wife has access to all my personal information. She's been planning this. That's what we're starting to think. But Mr. Patterson, there's more. Someone also filed tax returns in your name claiming income you never earned and deductions for charitable donations you never made. The IRS has flagged your account for audit. My knees went weak. How is that possible? Tax fraud is surprisingly easy if you have someone's personal information and know what you're doing. Your wife's background in marketing and social media would have given her the technical skills needed. As the search continued, Detective Kim's team found something else, evidence that someone had been intercepting my mail and packages. Hidden cameras revealed Sarah had been visiting my house when I wasn't home, using her old key to access my mailbox and gather more ammunition for her campaign. Mr. Patterson, we're going to recommend that the district attorney file charges against your wife for harassment, identity theft, fraud, and stalking. But I need you to understand, she's been very careful. Some of this will be hard to prove in court. What about all the evidence she fabricated against me? We've turned that over to your company's investigators. The good news is, our forensics team can usually detect digital manipulation. The bad news is, it takes time, and the damage to your reputation has already been done. That afternoon, my lawyer called with an update on Sarah's location. Michael, she's not at her sister's anymore. In fact, her sister filed a restraining order against her yesterday. Apparently, Sarah threatened her when she refused to lie to the police about your alleged abuse. Where is she now? We don't know. She checked into a hotel using cash and a fake name. But Michael, there's something else. We've discovered she's been running this same con before. What do you mean? I hired a private investigator to look into her background. Her real name isn't Sarah Mitchell, it's Sandra Mills. She was married twice before you, both times to men with good incomes. Both marriages ended with the husbands being accused of abuse after they discovered her affairs. I felt like the ground was falling away beneath me. She's done this before? The pattern is almost identical. She targets financially stable men, marries them, starts planning her exit strategy immediately, then destroys their reputations when they discover her deception. Her first husband lost his job and had to declare bankruptcy. Her second husband ended up in jail for 6 months on false domestic violence charges before he could prove his innocence. How did I not know about this? She's very good at creating new identities. New name, new background story, fake references. By the time her victims figure out what's happening, she's already moved on to the next target. That evening, I sat in my house surrounded by the chaos of the police search, trying to process everything I'd learned. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd married, was essentially a professional con artist who specialized in destroying lives. But understanding her pattern also gave me hope. If she'd done this before, there would be evidence. Other victims who could testify. A trail of deception that even Sarah couldn't erase completely. My phone rang around 9 p.m. Unknown number again. Hello, Michael. Sarah's voice was calm, almost cheerful. I heard you had some visitors today. Sarah, you need to turn yourself in. The police know everything. Do they? That's interesting, because I don't think they know about Phase 3 yet. What's Phase 3? You'll find out tomorrow. But I'll give you a hint, remember how you always said you wanted children? Well, congratulations. You're about to become a father. The line went dead, and I stared at my phone in confusion and horror. Sarah and I had never had children. We'd talked about it, but she'd always said she wanted to wait until we were more financially stable. What was she planning now? I found out the next morning when Detective Kim called me at 6 a.m. Mr. Patterson, you need to get down to the station immediately. Your wife has filed a report claiming you got her pregnant and then tried to force her to have an abortion. She's pressing charges for assault and harassment. That's impossible. We haven't been intimate in months, and she moved out weeks ago. She has medical records showing a positive pregnancy test and claims to have recordings of you threatening her if she didn't terminate the pregnancy. I drove to the police station in a daze. Sarah had found a way to make her final accusation the most damaging one yet, not just claiming I was abusive, but that I was the kind of man who would force a woman to end a pregnancy through violence and threats. When I arrived, Detective Kim showed me the medical records Sarah had provided. They showed a positive pregnancy test dated 3 weeks ago, along with what appeared to be evidence of physical trauma consistent with domestic violence. Mr. Patterson, is there any chance your wife is actually pregnant? I don't see how. We haven't been together that way since before I found the folder. She's also provided audio recordings of what she claims are threatening phone calls you made to her. Detective Kim played the recordings. It was definitely my voice, saying horrible things about what would happen if Sarah didn't take care of the problem. The audio was clear, the threats specific and disturbing. "That's not me," I said, even though I could hear my own voice clearly. "I mean, it's my voice, but I never said those things." Voice synthesis technology has gotten very sophisticated, Detective Kim acknowledged. But proving these recordings are fake will require expensive forensic analysis. How much more of this can she get away with? Not much more, if we're right about her pattern. She's escalating too quickly, making too many claims. People like your wife usually make a mistake eventually. What kind of mistake? They get overconfident. They push too hard, too fast, and something doesn't add up. As if summoned by our conversation, Detective Kim's phone rang. "Kim here," she answered, then listened for a long moment. "Are you sure? Okay, we'll be right there." She hung up and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Mr. Patterson, that was the hospital. Your wife just showed up in the emergency room claiming you attacked her and caused a miscarriage. She's demanding you be arrested immediately." "A miscarriage?" According to the medical timeline she provided, she would have been about 8 weeks pregnant. "But Mr. Patterson, here's the interesting part, the doctor who examined her says there's no evidence she was ever pregnant at all." Finally, Sarah had made her mistake. Dr. Elizabeth Carter met us at the hospital with a grim expression and Sarah's medical file in her hands. "Detective Kim, I need to report suspected fraud and false reporting. The woman who came in claiming to have suffered a miscarriage due to domestic violence has never been pregnant." "You're certain?" "Absolutely certain. The blood work, the physical examination, even the timeline she provided, none of it supports her claims. She's also trying to use medical records that appear to be forged." Detective Kim turned to me. "Mr. Patterson, it looks like your wife just gave us the evidence we needed to unravel her entire story. We found Sarah in a hospital room, playing the part of a grieving victim perfectly. She was pale, wearing a hospital gown, and had what appeared to be bruises on her arms and face. When she saw me, she started crying. 'How could you bring him here?' she said to Detective Kim. 'He's the one who did this to me.'" "Ms. Mills," Detective Kim said, using Sarah's real name deliberately. "We need to talk." Sarah's expression flickered for just a moment. "My name is Sarah Patterson." "Your real name is Sandra Mills. You've been married twice before, and you've run this same con on at least 2 other men." "I don't know what you're talking about." Dr. Carter stepped forward. "Ms. Mills, the pregnancy you're claiming to have lost never existed. Your blood work shows no evidence of pregnancy hormones, current or recent." "That's impossible. I took multiple tests. The pregnancy test you showed the police was positive for a different woman entirely. We've traced the medical records you provided, they belong to a patient in California who gave birth 6 months ago." I watched Sarah's face as her carefully constructed story fell apart. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. "Furthermore," Dr. Carter continued, "the bruises on your body appear to be self-inflicted and artificially enhanced with makeup. You have distinctive fingernail marks that match your own hands, not someone else's." Detective Kim pulled out her handcuffs. "Sandra Mills, you're under arrest for filing false police reports, identity theft, fraud, harassment, and attempted extortion." "This is ridiculous," Sarah said, but her voice had lost its victim-like quality. "You can't prove any of this." "Actually, we can. My forensics team has been busy while you've been playing victim. We've traced the fake social media accounts back to your computer. We've found evidence that you've been intercepting your husband's mail and using his personal information to commit fraud. And we've discovered your real identity and your pattern of targeting and destroying men." As the handcuffs clicked into place, Sarah looked at me with pure hatred. "You think you've won?" she said. "You have no idea how easy it would be for me to destroy you completely. This is nothing compared to what I could do." "Ms. Mills," Detective Kim said, "you're making things worse for yourself with every word." But Sarah wasn't done. As they led her toward the door, she turned back to me one final time. "Michael, you pathetic fool. Did you really think someone like me could ever love someone like you? You were just a placeholder until I found something better. And I was so close, David was already starting to fall for my act before you ruined everything. Sarah, I hope it was worth it. Because even if I go to jail, your life is still ruined. Your reputation is destroyed, your career is over, and everyone you know will always wonder if maybe, just maybe, you really were the monster I said you were." She was still talking as they took her away, making threats and promising revenge even as the evidence of her lies crumbled around her. Dr. Carter put a hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Patterson, I'm sorry you went through this. I've seen cases of domestic violence fraud before, but never anything this systematic. What happens now? Detective Kim answered. Now we build a case. And Mr. Patterson, I think you're going to find that a lot of other pieces start falling into place once word gets out about her arrest. She was right. Within hours of Sarah's arrest, my phone started ringing with calls from people who'd been manipulated by her story. My boss David called first. Michael, I just heard about the arrest. I want you to know that we never really believed those allegations. We're prepared to fully reinstate you and make a public statement clearing your name. Jake called next. Man, I feel terrible. I should have known something was off when she started asking so many detailed questions about everyone's personal lives. Even Mrs. Chen, my elderly neighbor, called. Michael, I never believed that woman who came asking questions about you. She didn't have the right credentials, and something about her felt dishonest. But the most important call came from Detective Kim that evening. Mr. Patterson, we've made contact with Sandra Mills' previous victims. Both of her ex-husbands are willing to testify about her pattern of behavior. One of them saved evidence from his own ordeal that corroborates what you've experienced. What kind of evidence? Similar spreadsheets, fake documentation, even some of the same fabricated police reports she filed against you. She's been using the same playbook for years. Will that be enough to convict her? With what we have now, plus the fraud charges, plus the testimony from multiple victims? Yes, I think we can put her away for a significant amount of time. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. The nightmare wasn't over yet, but at least now everyone could see it for what it really was. Sarah's trial began 3 months later. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case documenting her pattern of manipulation, fraud, and systematic destruction of her victims' lives. I testified about finding the backup plan folder, the spreadsheet ranking men by income, and the calculated way she'd been planning to replace me while we were still married. Sarah's first husband, Robert, testified about losing his job and having to declare bankruptcy after she'd accused him of abuse and financial misconduct. Her second husband, Marcus, described spending 6 months in jail on false domestic violence charges. The most damning evidence came from Sarah's own digital footprint. The forensics team had recovered deleted files from her devices showing years of planning and research. They'd found tutorials she'd bookmarked on voice synthesis technology, guides to creating fake medical records, and even a detailed manual on how to destroy someone's reputation. Sarah's defense attorney tried to argue that she was the victim of an elaborate frame-up, that all 3 of her ex-husbands had conspired against her. But the evidence was too comprehensive, too detailed, and spanned too many years for that argument to hold water. The most shocking revelation came when the prosecution presented evidence that Sarah had been running online courses teaching other women her manipulation techniques. They'd found a private forum where she charged $500 per session to teach what she called strategic relationship planning, essentially training other women to become con artists targeting successful men. Ladies, read one of her posts that was presented as evidence. Remember that men are just ATMs with emotions. The trick is knowing which buttons to push and when to move on to a machine with a higher balance. When Sarah took the stand in her own defense, I barely recognized the woman I'd married. Gone was any pretense of vulnerability or victimhood. She was cold, calculating, and utterly without remorse. I did what any smart woman would do, she said when asked about the spreadsheet. I evaluated my options and made strategic decisions about my future. If these men were stupid enough to fall for basic social manipulation, that's their fault, not mine. The prosecutor asked, Ms. Mills, do you feel any remorse for the pain you've caused? Remorse for what? For being smarter than them? For seeing opportunities they were too naive to recognize? The only thing I'm sorry about is getting caught. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Sarah to 8 years in prison for fraud, identity theft, filing false police reports, and harassment. She was also ordered to pay restitution to all her victims and prohibited from contacting any of us after her release. Ms. Mills, the judge said during sentencing, your crimes represent a particularly cruel form of psychological and financial abuse. You systematically targeted vulnerable individuals, gained their trust, and then weaponized that trust to destroy their lives. This court finds your complete lack of remorse deeply troubling. Sarah showed no emotion as the sentence was read. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked directly at me one last time and smiled that cold, calculating smile I'd learned to fear. But this time, it didn't scare me. It just made me grateful that I'd found the strength to expose the truth. It's been 6 months since Sarah's sentencing, and I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. The company not only reinstated me but promoted me to lead a new cybersecurity initiative focused on protecting employees from digital harassment. Apparently, my experience made me uniquely qualified for the role. The fake charges against me were all dropped once Sarah's pattern of behavior became clear. My credit has been restored, my reputation has been cleared, and most importantly, I've learned to trust my instincts again. I still live in the same house, but I've changed everything about it that reminded me of Sarah. New paint, new furniture, new security system. It feels like mine again instead of like a stage set for someone else's performance. My friends and family have been incredibly supportive. Jake apologizes every time I see him for not recognizing Sarah's manipulation sooner, but I don't blame him. She was a professional, fooling people was literally what she did for a living. I've started dating again, slowly and carefully. I met Lisa at a cybersecurity conference, and she's everything Sarah pretended to be: genuine, honest, and supportive. When I told her about my experience with Sarah, she didn't run away or look at me like I was damaged goods. Instead, she said it showed how strong I was to survive something like that and rebuild my life. You could have become bitter and suspicious of everyone, she said. Instead, you learn to be more careful without losing your ability to trust. That takes real courage. I still have moments where I wonder if I could have seen the signs sooner, if I could have avoided the whole nightmare by being less trusting or more skeptical. But my therapist reminds me that Sarah's deception wasn't my fault, it was a crime committed against me, not a mistake I made. Dr. Williams, my therapist, has helped me understand the psychology behind what Sarah did. Predators like her are experts at identifying and exploiting emotional vulnerabilities, she explained during one of our sessions. They study their targets the way scientists study lab specimens. Your capacity for trust wasn't a weakness, it was what made you a good person. She weaponized your best qualities against you. The therapy sessions have been crucial for my recovery. Initially, I resisted the idea of needing professional help. I thought I could just get over it and move on. But the trauma of systematic psychological manipulation runs deeper than surface wounds. There were nights I'd wake up in cold sweats, convinced that every kindness from friends or colleagues was part of some elaborate scheme. Hypervigilance is a normal response to what you experienced, Dr. Williams assured me. Your brain is trying to protect you from being fooled again. But we need to help you distinguish between healthy caution and paralyzing suspicion. The breakthrough came when I realized that Sarah's greatest weapon wasn't her lies, it was her ability to make me doubt my own perceptions. She'd spent months gaslighting me, making me question my memory, my judgment, even my sanity. Learning to trust myself again became the foundation of everything else. Part of my healing process involved documenting everything I'd learned about manipulation tactics. I created a detailed guide that law enforcement now uses in training seminars about relationship fraud. Detective Kim invited me to speak at a conference for investigators, where I met other professionals dealing with similar cases. These crimes are drastically underreported, explained FBI agent Patricia Reeves, who specializes in romance scams and relationship fraud. Most victims are too embarrassed to come forward, or they blame themselves for being stupid enough to fall for it. Your willingness to share your story publicly has encouraged dozens of other victims to seek help. The ripple effects of Sarah's arrest continued to unfold months after her sentencing. 3 more victims came forward, men from other states who'd encountered her years earlier but had been too ashamed to report what happened. Their testimonies revealed that Sarah's criminal career stretched back nearly a decade, with each iteration of her scheme becoming more sophisticated. One victim, Dr. James Chen from Portland, had lost his medical practice after Sarah's false accusations triggered a medical board investigation. Another, engineer Tom Bradley from Phoenix, had attempted suicide after Sarah's campaign destroyed his reputation and cost him custody of his children. These men had suffered in silence for years, believing they were isolated cases of her cruelty. Finding out there were others like me was both devastating and liberating, Tom told me during a video call. Devastating because it meant she'd destroyed so many lives, but liberating because it proved I wasn't crazy or weak or stupid. I was just her latest victim in a long line of calculated attacks. The prosecutor used these additional testimonies to file federal charges against Sarah for crossing state lines to commit fraud. The FBI investigation uncovered a network of women she'd trained in her manipulation techniques, leading to arrests in 4 different states. Sarah's strategic relationship planning courses had created a small army of con artists, each targeting successful men in their communities. The investigation revealed that Sarah had been operating under multiple identities simultaneously, maintaining active relationships with several men across the country while married to me. She had rental properties in 3 states, funded by money stolen from previous victims, and had been building a sophisticated identity theft operation that extended far beyond individual romance scams. Robert and Marcus, Sarah's other victims, have become unlikely friends. We formed a support group of sorts, meeting monthly to talk about our experiences and help each other heal. We've also started working with law enforcement to develop training materials to help other victims recognize this type of manipulation. The thing people don't understand, Marcus said during one of our meetings, is that women like Sarah don't just lie to you, they make you complicit in your own deception. They make you want to believe their lies because the alternative is admitting that someone you love has been systematically destroying you. Last month, I received a letter from a man in Seattle whose wife had been following Sarah's online tutorials. He'd found similar spreadsheets and planning documents, and my story had given him the courage to gather evidence and expose her before she could destroy his life completely. "You saved me from years of hell," he wrote. "Thank you for being brave enough to speak up." That letter reminded me why I decided to share my story publicly. Sarah may be in prison, but there are others like her out there, and their victims deserve to know they're not alone. The most important thing I've learned is that healing isn't about forgetting what happened or pretending it doesn't matter. It's about accepting that someone I trusted betrayed me in the worst possible way, and choosing to build something better from the pieces they left behind. I'm not the same person I was before I met Sarah. I'm more cautious, more aware of red flags, and much better at protecting myself. But I'm also stronger, more confident, and more grateful for the genuine connections in my life. Sarah tried to destroy me, but in the end, she only revealed how resilient I could be. And that's something no con artist can ever take away.